Hello, and welcome to the IronBox free webinar series, Hacking into Your Healthcare Systems. Today's presentation is on the top signs you're primed for a data breach in 2014. My name is Kevin Lam, and I'll be your presenter for today. Alright, let's do an introduction about IronBox. IronBox is a data protection company that develops a leading secure file transfer solution. Our secure files transfer solution was designed for security and privacy from the ground up, and it was designed and developed by actual security experts. IronBox is delivered as a SaaS service, which means there's no hardware or software for you to manage, and no extra IT costs or customer frustration for you to deal with. IronBox helps you stay compliant with various regulations and standards like HIPAA, PCI, NERC CIP, and it operates as a HIPAA business associate. So if you're interested in a trial of our secure file transfer service, contact us or shoot me an email after this webinar. Again, my name is Kevin Lam, and I'll be your presenter for today's webinar. My background is in ethical hacking, cloud, and mobile security. I've been legally hacking into systems on behalf of customers for over 15 years now, and I'm the inventor of the IronBox data protection platform, which we use to protect data on the cloud, mobile devices, and on laptops. I'm also the co-inventor of the Anti-SQL Injection library, and for those of you who have never heard of SQL injection, it's actually the #1 internet security vulnerability today and the #1 cause of data breaches. Before starting IronBox, I was a security researcher and senior security team member at Microsoft and a Big 4 audit firm. And finally, I'm the lead author of Microsoft's book called Assessing Network Security. Let's review today's goals for this webinar. In this webinar, I want to give you an introduction into the black market of healthcare records. Next, I'll walk you through some of the ways I would hack into your healthcare systems. Along the way, I'll give you top signs that I look for when I'm looking for easy targets. And at the end of the presentation, if time permits, we'll have a short question and answer period where I encourage you to ask questions about security. If we run out of time, all questions will be transcribed and answered and sent out to the attendees of the webinar. And finally, audience members will also receive a link to this recording as well as my healthcare security checklist. Alright, let's begin by whetting our security and privacy appetites first with a polling question, and that is, what types of sensitive data do you think criminals prefer? Okay, I'll open up the poll and give you a few seconds to submit your responses and see what you think. So the answer is, medical records actually are generally more preferred by criminals, and they fetch more per dollar. Obviously, it'll depend on supply and demand, but a medical record can actually go between $50 to $90 on average, whereas the going rate for something like a credit card can be anywhere between 50 cents and $2 per number these days. Well, why is that? The first reason is that medical records have a longer longevity than other data like credit cards. Normally, after a data breach involving a credit card, these credit cards command a high price. But over time, as the credit card companies catch up, those credit card numbers become stale or no longer usable, and the actual value of the credit card is depleted. Medical records, on the other hand, don't suffer from this. When your medical records are stolen, there's no such thing as canceling them. You can't cancel your medical records. And because of this longevity of that record, they have more value. Second, stolen medical records provide better anonymity for criminals. When you use a stolen credit card, before that transaction is completed, the credit card number is checked by the card carriers like Visa, Amex, and MasterCard, and it's denied or approved. With stolen medical records, however, checks aren't done, and even if they were, it would be easy enough to find a corrupt doctor who could then later deny not knowing that the record used was actually stolen. Finally, medical records provide a greater yield for criminals. Stolen medical records can be used in a variety of different ways to obtain substantial return on investment. So let me show you one way. In this example, I'll show you one way criminals can profit from the use of stolen medical records. First, they purchase a stolen medical record from an online data dump site. Let's just say the cost is $50 on the low end and $100 on the high end. Next, those criminals use that stolen record to submit a false medical claim, or they purchase prescription medicine like a controlled substance like Oxycontin pills. Each of these pills run about, at street value, $40 per pill, depending on the state. Sell 2 or 3 of these pills, and criminals have already made up their initial investment. Everything after that is just pure margin for the criminals. Then finally, this is perhaps the most insidious part of this transaction. Because healthcare records can't be canceled, that criminal could simply resell that medical record for even more profit and continue using that record for themselves. So as you can see, there's a reason why there's a high demand for stolen medical records today, and why healthcare organizations are frequently targeted. Healthcare organizations have a lot of the data that they want, and that data has a long shelf life and great returns on the investment, which now leads us to the question, how likely am I to suffer a data breach? In the remainder of this presentation, I'm going to show you some of the initial clues that I look for when I'm looking for what we call in the industry low-hanging fruit. These are targets that are easy to hack and yield the greatest likelihood of success. The reason why bad guys are looking for low-hanging fruit is because the longer they spend on target, the more likely they'll get caught. And that's something they want to avoid, because if they get caught, they go to jail, and horrible things get done to you at jail. But all joking aside, hackers are very much like home thieves. Why spend the effort and time trying to break into a home with reinforced doors, an alarm system, and a guard dog, and the possibility of getting caught, when the house next door is left wide open? Another important thing to point out is that you don't have to be actively attacked or hacked in order to trigger a data breach. Hacker attacks often lead to a data breach, but that's not always required, as you'll see in just a few moments. Finally, as defenders, your job is harder. You have to defend all possible ways into your organization from attackers. Attackers simply just need to find one that you missed. Alright, so let's begin. Okay, when I'm going after a healthcare target, the first thing I'm looking for is some sort of online-enabled method where patients can access their medical records. Oftentimes I'll look for web portals because those are easier to access and formulate attacks against. And web vulnerabilities are generally more well-known and well-documented, and there's lots of automated tools that I can leverage. Again, I want to make my job as easy as possible. Vendor portals and purchase order systems are great too, because often these portals are not public-facing, and so they're less fortified. Okay, so online portal. Well, that pretty much includes most or all healthcare organizations, right? Well, everyone's moving to the online delivery platform. That's true. But again, what I'm looking for is, of those initial targets, which one seems to have the weakest security, or which one seems like the lowest hanging fruit. All right, let me demonstrate what I mean. Okay, in just a few moments, I'm going to drop into my browser and I'll show you some of the initial things I do to case out a target. I'm looking for clues that the target is soft, and an easy win for me. I get in, I get out, and on to the next target. Let's begin. Okay, when I'm first profiling a target, I want to learn everything I can about that target. Especially I want to understand what their security maturity level looks like. If it's high, then most likely it's going to be a hard target, and I may get caught, and that's something I don't want. If they're an easy target or low-hanging fruit, my chances of getting caught are much less. And so what I'm going to do is, usually what I do is I start off with Google and I try to find everything I can about that target. Now, Google has a pretty nifty feature or a filter called Cite, which lets you limit the search results that Google returns to a specific site that you give it. So for example, our site is go-ironbox.com. So what I would do is I would type site go-ironbox.com, hit enter, and here Google returns everything it knows about go-ironbox.com. So I'll take an initial look at this, see what I can find. I could also use Bing for this as well, or any other search engine. So bing.com. Again, I'll type site go-ironbox.com, hit enter. It returns slightly less results, but I'll go through it, see who the team members are, who works there, what the leadership team looks like, and just get an idea of their security maturity level. Now, I might also want to know who's on this company's security team, right? And to do that, I can check LinkedIn. And so using that same technique that I just showed you, we can limit our results to sites on LinkedIn. So let me show you. So here I'll type IronBox security, and I'll limit the results to all the results on LinkedIn. Hit enter, and so I'll go through these results and I'll try to find who are the security members on IronBox. So there's my profile right there. And again, what I'll do is I'll scan through it and try to understand who those security team members are. What I'll also do is I'll check out their Facebook profiles. And so what I know, when security professionals, they tend to have, well, at least the serious ones, they tend to have other security friends. And so what I would do is I would try to find that person on Facebook, check out their profile, and see who their friends are. And here I would check out Kevin Lam, try to match the LinkedIn profile to the Facebook profile, and then I would log into Facebook and check out who their friends are. So by now, I'll have a pretty good idea of who are the security team members on this target that I'm profiling. I may actually even want to know who isn't on the security team of the target that I'm profiling. And the reason why that is because people who are not in security or don't have appreciation for security, they often pick really weak passwords to protect their account. And so, possibly I might be able to use that non-technical or non-security person's account to get into their system. So again, I can go back using Google. I can limit my searches to LinkedIn, find out everybody who works at IronBox, and then figure out, okay, of the people that I know, who looks like they may not know what they're doing from a security perspective. Okay, so I've enumerated who works on the security team, who doesn't work on the security team, some potential accounts or targets that I may be interested later on. What I'll do at this point is poke around their site or their online portal a little bit and just get a general understanding of what security configurations they made. And oftentimes a good way to do this is to look at how they've configured their SSL certificates, which is the primary way for many organizations of how they provide their initial security controls. And so what I would do here is I would use a tool called SSL test. So I would just type SSL test. Google returns Qualys's SSL test, and what this does is you can submit here a site, and what this page will do is it'll test that site and let you know what security configurations it's doing well and what it's not doing very well. So I'll go here and type our demo site here. So I'll put demo2.goironcloud.com. Check this box off. Don't want to show the results on the public boards, and hit submit. And so what the site will do is it'll scan for you on your behalf demo2.goironcloud.com, go through the process of scanning it, and then after a while it'll come back and give you the results. Okay, the tool's done scanning, and here are the results. We happen to get an A+ rating, but if the target didn't, I would just scroll down here, review the results, and look and try to understand why they didn't get an A+ rating. And generally, if you find a site with a pretty low rating, that site hasn't taken the extra security steps to secure their site, and so that might give you clues as to what their security maturity level is. All right, next, maybe what I'll do is I'll poke around their portal just a little bit. Like, I won't full on attack it, but I'll poke around to see if I can see any sort of configurations that would lead me to believe that they may not be have the security maturity level required to keep bad guys out. So I may try something like this. For instance, I see it's using SSL here. Maybe I'll see if I can force it to not use SSL here, right? So again, here looks like we're forced to use SSL. Next, I may even try a couple of bad logins, right, to see how the system responds when I log in, with wrong credentials a couple times. So I'll just go ahead and see if I can. What happens when I log in too many times with the incorrect credentials? And what you see here is we've tried too many failed login attempts, and what this site's doing is it's using a capture control. And so this is generally something that you would see from applications developed by developers who are more conscious about security. And so if I were to find a target where I tried a whole bunch of failed login attempts and the system did nothing about it to slow me down, that might be a good target. That might be an indicator to me that, hey, this might actually be a soft target I could work with. Okay, so my goal really as a bad guy is I need medical records. I want to get stolen medical records. So I can use Google to see if the target that I'm targeting has already committed the ultimate sin, right? Maybe they've already exposed medical records, and I don't have to do any work. I just have to go collect them. So I may even do something. I'll check it with Google, and so Google has an additional filter, and it's called file type. And I can specify any type of file that I want to return or that's visible to Google. So if I want to find doc files, so Microsoft doc files, I can do that. But I'm also going to limit my results to the site that I'm targeting. So I know on our site we don't have any doc files, so I'm going to use Microsoft as an example here because I know they've got a bunch of doc files on there. Hit return. And now this has given me all the results, all the publicly visible doc files on Microsoft.com and all the subdomains as well. And so what I do is I'll go through maybe the first couple of pages of those 81,000 results and see if I can find any data that our target may have exposed accidentally. I can change the doc file type to maybe something more like XLS or Excel spreadsheets. Hit enter. Here are all the spreadsheets that are publicly visible. Maybe it's a PowerPoint presentation, maybe do like that, or maybe I can even look for a text file, right, or a TXT file, or what have you. So again, these are really powerful features that you can use off of search engines where malicious hackers are profiling their targets to see what's visible online, if they've already exposed medical records, and again, get an idea of their target. Is it going to be a hard target or a soft target? If it's hard, probably best to move on to the next target. If it's soft, then this might be worth investigating some more. So that's some of the initial things I would do when I'm casing out a target initially. And and this, again, there's a lot more techniques you can use, but here, those were just some of the general steps that I would use personally. All right. So that was some of the initial profiling steps that I perform on targets to get an idea of the ways I might possibly get into those systems, and more importantly, assess the security maturity of that organization. If it looks high, I move on to another target. If I think it's low and I won't get caught, then I have a fish on the hook and I spend the time. The sickening part of this is that none of what I just showed you was rocket science, and we did it in just a few moments. So basically, all attackers need to do is be able to have a web browser, a search engine, and type a couple keystrokes. So you might be wondering to yourself, that Google hacking technique that I just showed you, does that ever work? Does that stuff actually ever happen? Well, unfortunately, the answer is yes. The New York Presbyterian Hospital and Columbia University had a data breach where they accidentally exposed patient records online. In fact, 6,800 patient records were found online and Google searchable. The interesting thing about this incident was that there was no attack that caused this data breach. There was no hacker behind it. It was simply an individual who was searching online for their deceased partner, and they happened to be a patient of that hospital. The end result was a $4.8 million fine, which was the largest in the history for HIPAA, and of course the reputational damage that followed. So think about your own organizations. Are you accidentally leaking data online? Is $4.8 million worth your time to run a few checks on yourself? This leads us to our next slide. All right, what can you do today? The number one thing I would recommend that you do today is to start to profile yourself. Right? Start enumerating all the different possible ways that an attacker can get into your organization and all the different ways healthcare information can leave your physical premises and networks. So for instance, check for things like web servers, FTP servers, custom portals, vendor portals. VPN accounts, email servers, accounts of employees that have already left the company, inactive vendor accounts. Does your organization allow access to services like Dropbox, Google Drive, Microsoft OneDrive, or Box? Are employees synchronizing their work to home computers? And more. So for every entry or exit point you find, make sure to include those in your regular security tests and reviews. Alright, we've covered a lot of ground at this point. Let's take a quick audience poll, and that is, how many electronic records does your organization maintain? I'll give you a couple seconds and we'll look at the results. Okay, we're back. Well, the important thing to parse out is that it doesn't matter how many records that you have. You're still a target and a potential for a data breach. So reasoning like, oh, we don't maintain that many records, so the risk is low, is no longer valid, as you'll see shortly. All right, let's move on. The next thing that I look for in assessing if one of my customers is a target for a data breach is, do they use encryption on their mobile devices? As a bad guy, I love mobile devices. Mobile devices like laptops, phones, and tablets, people love them, and they dump all sorts of data on these devices so they can stay productive. Maybe I can squeeze an hour or two of work during the commute, or get some company emails done while I take the kids to Little League. The problem is these devices are easily stolen or lost. And because these devices contain work data and probably healthcare data, they now become a risk for a data breach if they're lost or stolen. To make matters worse, the data on these devices are often not protected, and if they are, that protection is not sufficient. So how real is the threat of a lost or stolen laptop? Here are a couple examples I found. Concentra Health Services was reported to have a laptop stolen straight from their facilities, which contained unprotected PHI. The resulting fine for them was $1.7 million. QCA lost 148 records on a laptop that was stolen from a workforce member's car. The resulting fine was $250,000. The interesting point here is that 148 is not a lot of records, so it just goes to show you that not having that many records doesn't insulate you from the threat of attack or a data breach. Then recently, Advocate Medical Group reported that over 700,000 patient information records on 2 stolen laptops were exposed. Well, here's the thing. With just a few mouse clicks, all of these data breaches that we spoke about, they could have been easily avoided. And I'm not kidding. You're going to laugh at how absurdly easy the thing I'm about to show you is. In just a few moments, I'm going to drop into a demo window and show you a free operating system feature that might help your organization avoid their next $1 million fine. Alright, so here we are in Windows Explorer, and I'm going to show you a brain-dead way to enable encryption on a folder. So first, start off by creating a folder. You can name it anything you want. Next, right-click on that folder. Select Properties. Select Advanced. And then check off this Encrypt Contents to Secure Data. Hit OK. OK again. And what you notice is that this folder is now green. Green means that it's being protected by encrypting file systems, or EFS in Windows. Right? And so that means anything you create inside this folder, or you drag files into this folder, what have you, it will automatically be encrypted for you. So I can create a Word document, I can create anything I want there. I can add an Access database or an Excel spreadsheet, what have you. I can double click on that file, work on it like I normally do, save it, and Windows takes care of all the work for you, right? And so this is a great way to encrypt your healthcare data that's sitting on your mobile devices, because if it's stolen, that data is encrypted and it stays protected. Now there's a caveat here. You have to have a strong password that's protecting your account. You have to have a password, and it has to be strong, and it has to be existent. So if your password is blank, or you don't have a password set on it, or it's something that's easily guessed, this system will not work very well for you. So again, this is Windows encrypting file systems, and just a few mouse clicks, we enabled encryption on our system, and potentially helped our organization avoid millions and millions of dollars of fines. Okay, so now you know about the threat of mobile devices and not using encryption on them. I just showed you a brain-dead way to enable encryption on Windows machines. So now what do you do? Well, first, require that all PHI stored on laptops and mobile devices, if they're allowed at all, be saved on encrypted disks or folders. By doing this, you can save yourself a lot of grief because if that mobile device is ever lost or stolen, you can show that the data on the device was encrypted and avoid lots of fines. Now, you may get pinged for other HIPAA violations, but at least leaving data exposed and unprotected won't be one of them. The encryption that I showed you, it's pretty standard, but you may be in the process of rolling out a more industrial strength or enterprise solution. Use that encryption anyways in the interim. Concentra, for example, was in the process of rolling out encryption solution. However, that data breach happened before that rollout could finish. Talk about bad timing. Okay, your organization may have implemented all the security and privacy rule requirements of HIPAA, but you're still at high risk for data breach. Why? Your vendors. Vendors can often be the weak spot in your organization. Their security policies and procedures might not match yours or be to the level or standard that you're at. And when there's a gap, there's a potential for a security incident and possibly a breach. Vendors can be things like your billing provider or the cloud service that you use. Now, HIPAA requires covered entities to sign business associate agreements and business associates to meet compliance requirements, but compliance does not equal security or privacy. Here are some of the questions that I ask my customers' vendors that give me clues as to whether my customer is primed for a data breach. Okay, here are some of the top questions I would ask vendors if I were you. Just as a note, I'll be sending these out as part of your attendee packet with full explanation. So if you're trying to take notes, you can relax and just listen. So the first question I would ask is, what is your application security process? Application security process is simply an overlay of controls that developers add to their development process to help ensure or help mitigate the risk from security vulnerabilities in their code. Next, I would ask them, what encryption algorithms do you use? Encryption is used to protect data, but like any other technology, encryption algorithms get outdated, they get found to be insecure, or they get broken. So I want to understand, what do you currently use to protect my customers' data and, quite frankly, their reputation? Next, I'm going to ask them, how do you reduce the risk from SQL injection? And the reason why I'm focusing on SQL injection and not some other kind of attack is because SQL injection is the number one security vulnerability today and is the number one cause of data breaches. So I want to understand, how are these vendors controlling that risk to my customer? Next, I'm going to ask them, how is my customer's data protected at rest? Now, when data is stored on a server, it's at risk, right? Someone could come into a facility and steal a computer or grab the hard drive or what have you. So I need to know, how is my data being protected while it's stored on your systems? And then the fifth question I would ask is, who has access to the encryption keys? Now, whenever you're using encryption, that encryption algorithm has a key, and that key protects that data. And so in fact, that key is the only feasible way to recover that data. So I want to understand who at the company has access to those encryption keys. Do your vendors have access to it? Do all your employees do? Is it just a subset of employees? When do they access those keys? I need to understand those policies and procedures to understand what is the risk to my customer. So more questions, right? Here are the rest of the questions I would ask. Again, I'm going to send these out with your attendee packet with full explanation shortly after this webinar. So a question I'd ask is, how is my data transferred and how is it protected in transit when you're doing that transfer? So I want to understand, what mode are you using to transfer my data? Is it email? Is it FTP? Is it secure file transfer? Is it Dropbox or Google Drive? How are you transmitting that data? And then the second part of that question is, how is that data protected while it's en route between point A and point B? And the reason why I'm concerned about that is because communication protocols, if they're not protected, they can be snooped upon, and that could lead to a data breach or an exposure of medical records. The next question I'd ask is, what is your password security policy? So you can fortify any system, any application to the point where it's not even hackable. But if the passwords that you use to access that application or this online service or what have you, if those are weak, all that work you've done to protect it is for none, right? So how do you as a vendor, what is your password strength policy requirements? How do you ensure that passwords are changed on a regular basis. Next question is, when are your systems patched? So every system has to run on some operating system and it has to use some third-party application. Right? When are those systems patched and when are those applications patched? Question 9, what security training has your team taken? Now, again, same thing. You can build a super secure solution, but if the people operating that solution aren't trained to recognize or use the application in a secure fashion, it's not going to matter. A data breach is probably going to happen. And then the 10th question I'd ask is independent security assessments. So vendors have their applications and their networks within their organizations. Who from a third party has done a security assessment of those networks and applications? Even we're security experts. We've developed an application, a secure file transfer application, but we still have outside third party take a look at how we're doing. Was there anything that we missed? Is there something that we could improve on, or is there some other thing that we can implement to improve our security? Right. So again, these are the kind of questions I would be asking vendors if I were you today. All right. Well, we just touched the tip of the iceberg. Here are even more ways attackers can attack your systems and trigger a data breach for you. The point here that I want to make is that simply that security is a process, right? It's not an event. It's not one thing that you fix, right? So even if you fix and address all of these issues that I showed you here today, there's still potential for a data breach. Security, good security that is a mixture of good process, technology, and people. Your process defines a set of risks that you're trying to control and how you control them. Technology provides you a means by which you implement a strategy to control that risk. And then well-trained people help to use that technology in a secure way. So with all three of those working together, that's how you get great security. Today, I've given you just a glimpse into the black market for healthcare records and why criminals today are motivated to attack your healthcare systems. The healthcare on those systems and devices have value that criminals want to exploit. We learned about some top signs that you're primed for a data breach, did some demos, and learned about mitigation techniques. A lot was covered. But here are your key takeaways. The first one is that it's impossible to prevent or thwart every hacking attack or data breach. At some point, everyone gets hacked or experiences a data breach. For example, last week, Avast Antivirus, a security company, was hacked. And the week before that, eBay, who has a dedicated security team, revealed that they were hacked. The key strategy now is mitigating the risk and containing the impact. Second, don't be the low-hanging fruit. Malicious hackers are humans too. They don't want to spend any time in jail. So if you're the easiest house in the neighborhood to break into and not get caught, they're coming after you. But it will take work. But thankfully, there are enough organizations out there, i.e. the ones that are not attending this webinar, who aren't investing in security and making themselves easy targets. Third, you don't have to be hacked in order to trigger a data breach. And then finally, compliance does not equal security or privacy. You can meet all of HIPAA's security and privacy requirements, but in order to keep up with today's threat landscape, there's more you need to do. All right, thank you very much for your attention and time. Let's open up the floor for some questions. But first, I'd like to tell you about our next webinar in August. All right, in our next free webinar, I'm going to show you how we protect healthcare data on our very own mobile app. I'll show you the designs we chose, the techniques we used, and some of the tricks that we employed to help ensure that the data on the device, even if the device is lost or stolen, stays protected. It's going to be more of a technical webinar, so what I want you to do is invite all of your developers and vendors, even if they aren't mobile developers. The techniques and approaches that I'll show will still apply even if they're using other platforms, so Android, iOS, what have you. So let me train your developers for an hour on August 6th. Our email's at the bottom, so ping us and you can reserve your spot. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar, and I hope to see you at our next one in August. Until then.